This is the Governance and Audit Committee meeting, Wednesday the 30th of November. It's just gone 1 o'clock, slightly late. I'm Councillor Paul Wood, Chairman of this committee, and on my right is Councillor Kathy Rice-Oxley, who's Vice Chairman, and on my left is Sarah Downs, who's Democratic Services Officer. I'd also like to welcome representatives from District Audit and Internal Audit. Thank you very much for attending. The announcement I've got to make before we start is, after we finish the committee meeting, we will be having a private meeting with Internal Audit in the Chief Exec's office. It will take about an hour, so it will be a private meeting and then some training. It will take about an hour in total, so that depends on when this meeting finishes. So if we start this meeting, apologies for absence. Sarah, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies have been received by Councillor Sue Woolley and Councillor Ian Stokes. Councillor Ashley Baxter will today be representing Alliance SK on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Item 2, disclosures of interest. Any disclosures of interest anybody like to declare? No disclosures of interest. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of September. Any comments on those meetings? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. Minute number 24 on page 4 talks about the auditor representing Grant Thornton informed the committee that this would be rectified. As you know, we've been sent a revised report from Grant Thornton, which has deleted the sentence that I drew attention to. However, the previous paragraph still doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any grammatical sense. So I don't know whether we want to ask for a rectified report, and also can you clarify how that report will be put into the public domain?
Okay, if I could, I did look at that, Councillor Baxter, and I must admit, I think the wording was slightly wrong. So, could you from District Audit explain that, please? Alison, do you want to do that? Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to confirm, an amended report has been received today. It should have read spending as opposed to accordingly, so that will be distributed to members following this meeting, and I'll discuss getting it onto Modern Gov with Democratic Services. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm happy to accept that. Are you, Councillor Baxter? Yeah, thank you. Any more comments on the minutes? Do you want me to go through them page by page? Page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14. I'm quite happy. Do we have a proposer to accept those minutes? Councillor Gloria Johnson. Have a seconder. Councillor Richard Dixon Warren, please. Right. All those in favour of accepting those minutes, please raise your hand. That's all 5 of us. That's unanimous. Thank you. We now go on to item 4, updates from the previous meeting on page 15. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that I'm grateful for the public workshop that took place this morning. I'm grateful that it was in public. It's a shame that members of the public weren't allowed to speak. However, I did find it a productive meeting, and I look forward to seeing the results implemented at the earliest opportunity. Thank you.
Any other comments? No. Okay. We'll then move on to Internal Audit Progress Report, item 5. Lucy, I think that's you, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So this report picks up from the report presented in September of the audit activity completed up to November. So you can see from the key messages, if I take you to the page 10 of the pack, is it 10? 19 of the pack, that we've issued one substantial assurance around cybersecurity, and there's a number of reports in progress. We are also proposing some changes to the plan, and again the rationale for that is provided to the committee. So one of the things the committee asked us last time was to have some engagement with the internal audit plan going forward. So on page 21, we've set out a brief outline of our process. A further report will be presented in March, but this is to give you an early insight of the process, but also early engagement around any areas of particular concern that you would want us as your internal auditor to consider as part of our assurance work and plan for next year. So I don't propose to go any more detail into the report, but happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for internal audit? You got a question? Yeah, Vice Chairman, Councillor Caffey.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on page 20 of the agenda pack, so it talks about the proposed action plan and some agreed management actions. Will we as a committee have sight of the action plan at all? Thank you.
We haven't provided the detail of the action plan to this committee, given the nature of the topic, cybersecurity, but we do have a tracker that will look at the implementation. If you wanted more detail, you've got substantial assurance, but if you wanted more detail, then I would suggest that would need to be an exempt item, given the nature of the area that's been given the assurance on. But it is available if you need it, or we can share it informally. I'll be guided by Richard.
Yeah, I think I'd welcome that going forward the committee do have full sight of the actions and the timelines agreed and the management responses to those, so the committee feel better informed, if you like, on the tracking. As say, Lucy and her team will monitor them on behalf of the committee and report back, but I think there's no it would be, for me, be good practice if the committee did see them going forward.
Yeah, just to follow up through you, Chair. Yeah, I think that would be great, just because this is such an area of concern to us. I mean, things we've read in the news recently about things that can occur, and I know you're all over this, but I think that the committee would like to have the extra reassurance of seeing the detail at some point. Thank you so much.
Okay, no more questions on that report? Okay, well, I'd like to thank Lucy Pledge for doing that. We seem to get pretty good substantial assurance, so could I have a proposal to accept that, please? Councillor Laurie Johnson, and Vice Chairman will second it. So all those in favour accept the internal audit report? That's unanimous. Thank you. Next item 6, external audit annual governance report. Would you like to comment on that, please? Make your report.
Thank you, Chair. So this report summarises our findings to date for the 2021-22 audit of the financial statements. It is important to note that the report is still only a draft at this point in time due to the limited progress that we've been able to make in the audit procedures on the Council's property valuations. This report is only around the audit of the financial statements. It doesn't include more than just a high-level update around the value for money work that we will be doing, because that work is not yet complete, but we're aiming to finalise that in the next couple of months and issue the report on the value for money work early in the new year. In terms of the financial statements audit, unfortunately there have been some delays in completing the work. We have had some significant levels of sickness on our side within the audit team, which have resulted in us sort of reprofiling the delivery of our audits. However, a large part of the reason for the audit being incomplete at this point is due to delays in us receiving information from the Council's valuer. So we would like to thank the finance team for their assistance in following up on those queries and helping get that information through, and it is now coming through, but it's going to be quite an iterative process. So we are not yet in a position to sign the financial statements. We're aiming for the work to be substantially complete in December, but that is contingent on us getting the information that we need for assurance through. Outside of that work on the property values, we've not yet identified any significant findings, so we've set out in detail the progress against our significant risks that we identified in our audit plan on pages 7, 8 and 9 on the report, and then it's followed by other sort of key information on progress. One point that is worth noting is that on our work on the valuation of the net pension liability, we have identified a difference between the assumption that the actuary has made regarding future salary increase rates and the assumption that our expert have informed us we should expect, but we're happy that that does not have a material impact on the financial statements, so that's not going to cause us a big issue. Page 3 of our report does list a number of outstanding items. So we have made progress in a number of those areas since the report was written. And it's worth also noting that the final few points on that list are relatively standard for an audit findings report, and you'll see them in most reports that we issue. So the appendices go on to detail the recommendations we've raised during the audit to date, further information in relation to the adjustments we've identified to date that are above our clearly trivial threshold, and our proposed audit fees. It is worth noting that we originally proposed an audit fee for the year of £66,750. Due to the additional time it's taking to complete the valuations work, we might look to increase that, but we will discuss any increases with the Chief Finance Officer, and it will also have to be approved by PSAA before we can finalise it. That was all I was planning to say, unless anybody has any questions on anything in the report.
Thank you. I'll open it to members then. Any questions or comments? Anybody like to have questions or comments? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. I think this is the appropriate time to draw attention to the recent press coverage about the Council's investments in the Qatar National Bank. It certainly was embarrassing for the Council and for councillors. The information as presented by the Guardian newspaper, I think, was over-egged and exaggerates because of the way that the question...
Sorry to interrupt you, Councillor Baxter. I just think, I appreciate that's a valid question. I just think that ought to come under the next item, under item 7, Treasury Management, because it does list the investments under that. So if you could raise it under that, I'd be pleased. Is that okay? Yeah. Have you any questions for on the district audit report? Have you?
Thank you. You sort of answered what I was going to ask, actually, but if I can just ask again. So this thing about the net pension liability and considering the assumptions optimistic, can you just explain to me, I mean, does there need to be agreement between your views and the views given, or, yeah, sorry, if you just explain that.
So we have a central report nationally, which is written by PwC as our expert in the area, which sets out kind of ranges that we should expect these assumptions to fall within. So where they fall outside of those ranges, we just have to consider whether we're happy that's appropriate and whether there is sort of a sensible rationale for that. So we have challenged the actuary and they have given us their reasoning, and it's not inappropriate. And if it were different, it wouldn't be materially different in the financial statements anyway. So we are happy that it is a reasonable assumption. It just comes out with a slightly more positive number than if they have used an assumption that was within the range that we were expecting. Does that make sense?
Thank you. On page 21, just about the service organisation assurance regarding the payroll services, could you just expand on that item? Thank you.
Yes, so this is a common recommendation across sort of local government nationally this year, where councils have sort of outsourced elements of their payroll services to iTrent. iTrent this year have effectively said that if the council wants a report to give assurance over the processes at iTrent, they've effectively increased the fee for that. So it's not uncommon for councils not to have received that report this year. we haven't found any issues. We don't have any significant concerns in the processes at iTrent. It's more of a, in future, the council might want to consider whether they have assurances over stuff that's not happening at the council within their own teams, as it were. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Just finally, on page 17, so delaying the certification, do you have a timescale? Do you know when you expect this to be completed? Thank you.
Not really. So the certificate to sort of close the annual process can't be issued until the very end of the process. So we have to have issued the opinion on the financial statements. We have to have issued our commentary on the council's arrangements to secure value for money, and we also have to have completed anything that the NAO ask us to do around the whole of government accounts. And we don't yet know when the NAO are going to issue their guidance for this year, setting out exactly what we need to do. So we will issue the certificate as soon as we are able in the new year, but I can't tell you exactly when it will be.
Okay, if I just bring in Alison, I think Alison wants to answer that, don't you, Alison? No, you don't want to answer it.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Just to come back on the query over payroll, the payroll service isn't outsourced to iTrent. We use the iTrent system to process our payroll. And just to assure members, we do have sufficient controls in place in-house, reconciliations to ensure that all of the process, all the information processed within iTrent is accurate and it is secure. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for the confusion. As you know, we only received this report this morning, so that's why I'm a little bit disorientated or discombobulated. I don't know what the word is. On page 12 or page 10, depending on which numbers you look at, it talks about the key findings arising from the group audit, and it mentions Leisure SK Limited and Gravitas Limited. So look forward to that work being finalised. What audit has taken place? Forgive me if I've forgotten it, but what audit has taken place on the transactions of Invest SK and Environment SK Limited?
Alison, can... Yeah.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Just to confirm that we're only required, for materiality thresholds, we're only required to produce group accounts for Gravitas and Leisure SK, which was covered in when we went through the statement of accounts in July. Invest SK do have an audit completed by Duncan and Topless, which I believe will be presented at will have been presented at Companies Committee. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Richard wants to come
well, not particularly on that point. I just wanted to respond to the comment that was made about you only got the information this morning. This information was released on Friday via modern.gov and email sent to all members of this committee. So there was ample sufficient time over the weekend for members to read it. I think, as we all know, we're trying to wean ourselves off paper copies. I know paper copies were available this morning, but the electronic system was releasing this information on Friday, which we would encourage members to embrace rather than rely on paper.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Alison. Any further questions, anybody? No? Councillor Gloria Johnson.
Well, I appreciate that we're trying to wean ourselves off of paper copies. Some of us have difficulty in following computers in meetings, and I myself have trouble getting into the Gov paperwork. So perhaps just a quick training session for some of us to be able to access them on this Gov thing. But like Ashley says, this is the first I've looked at this, because I am not confident of accessing it on them laptopy things that we've got. So perhaps a little bit of a training session that we could come in and reiterate it might be beneficial to some of us. Thank you very much, because I'm old.
I must say, Councillor Johnson, I agree with you. I find it easier to read things on air than computers. I can read things on computers, I know we all can, but I must admit I do find it easier on air, same as you, so I agree with your comments. I'll second that proposal. So could we have a vote? All those in favour of accepting the report, please. Thank you. That's unanimous. We'll move on. Now we've got
Mr.
items...
Chairman, sorry to interrupt before you announce the next item. We did agree in the pre-meet that the statement of accounts was going next.
I was going to announce that, Richard.
Brilliant, thank you.
I realise that. Yeah, Richard wants to take, and I've agreed to it, to take out a statement of accounts before item 8, before item 7. I think that's what you're saying, isn't it, Richard? So I'm quite happy to do that. So I will say these statements of accounts, I only received them this morning, but we did have the draft statements account at the previous meeting. So I think probably, Richard, if I could ask you, because I haven't had time to read through all these final accounts, but we did have the draft a few months ago. So if Richard could actually emphasise the main differences or the main points, I think, or Alison could, that would be quite useful, I think. So we've had the draft. This is the final. I'm asking, what are the main differences, really? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you've already confirmed, the draft accounts were reviewed by Governance and Audit Committee on the 20th of July and were published on the 29th of July. We have a statutory deadline of publishing the draft accounts by the 31st of July, so obviously this was met. The statement of accounts have been updated to reflect the changes that have been identified to date by both the finance team and those agreed with external audit. They are detailed in Table 1 and paragraph 2.11, so I will go through those later on in the presentation. As external audit have already confirmed, the date for publishing the audited accounts was today, but as they've confirmed, the Council will not meet this date due to delays beyond our control. But these delays are common across local government. There's delays across the sector due to the resourcing of primarily due to the resourcing of external audit. The statement of accounts includes a narrative report on pages 39 to 52 of the agenda pack, which provides a guide to the most significant matters reported in the accounts. It explains the Council's financial position and assists in the interpretation of these statements. So, for example, there will be narrative explaining differences between last financial year and this financial year to give the readers of the accounts a greater understanding. Pages 98 to 109 of the agenda pack detail the annual governance statement, which is a requirement for the Council to produce. The statement provides a review of the effectiveness of the Council's system of governance, risk management and internal control. Paragraph 2.8 of this report provides details of the responsibilities of external audit, but Grant Thornton have already presented their report. So I'll move to paragraph 2.11, which identifies the changes that have been made to date. So the page numbers in the table refer to the page numbers of the statement of accounts, but I'll also reference the page number of the agenda pack to assist members. So the first amendment is to page 59, note 5. We detailed a prior period adjustment in there, but Audit have asked us to remove the wording because the prior period adjustment actually related to the 2021 statement of accounts. So this will now just read there were no...
Could I just interrupt you, Alison? Just for my own clarification, when you refer to a page number, that's the page of the statement of accounts rather than the page in this agenda, because we've had this slight confusion before, haven't we, where we've got...
page 59, it's page 7 of the statement of accounts, or page 59 of the agenda pack. Okay. I'm happy to refer to either page number.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I know it's just, we've had it before when there's...
So the
numbers as the accounts and the numbers as the... Yeah, okay, thank you.
The larger number is the agenda report page number. Page 59, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is confusing, so we have to number our statement of accounts, but obviously we also number the agenda packs as well, which we have to do. Page 67 of the agenda report pack, page 15 of the statement of accounts, officer remuneration, bracket 50,000 to 55,000, has been amended from 4 officers to 5 officers. Page 75 of the agenda report pack, page 23 of the accounts. External audit just asked us to include a sentence to say that we depreciate assets in the year of acquisition and there's no depreciation in the year of disposal. So it was just an addition to the wording just to make it clear what our depreciation policy actually is. Page 82 of the agenda report pack, financial instruments. The table that includes long-term debtors has been amended from 877 to 480 as the Gravitas loan was reclassified from long-term to short-term debtors. Can confirm that loan has now been fully repaid, which was why it was reclassified. Page 91 of the agenda report pack, page 39 of the accounts, operating leases. The table has been amended, so the operating leases no later than 1 year has been amended from 637,000 to 663,000. Between 1 to 5 years has been amended from 1.775 million to 1.877 million, and later than 5 years amended from 2.088 million to 2.048 million. The total of the table has increased from 4.5 to 4.588 million. Page 97 of the agenda pack, page 45 of the statement of accounts. The basis of estimating assets and liabilities. Rate of increase in salaries has been amended from 2.6% to 3.6%, which was a typographical error when the information was produced. And page 108 of the agenda report pack, page 56 of the accounts, the audit fees figure has been amended from £55,000 to £89,000. When this note was produced, the draft audit plan hadn't been received, so we used the audit fee published by the PSAA in the draft accounts. I should just note all of these amendments to date have all been disclosure amendments. There haven't been any amendments to the core financial statements. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you for that, Alison. There's a few. There doesn't seem very many amendments, but I'm pleased you've gone through it and explained it quite well. Any questions from the committee now, then? Councillor Baxter.
I've got 3. The first one is, where do I find in this pack the loan to Environment SK Limited? The second is, on the remuneration page, can somebody explain how and why we've paid almost £500,000 in termination benefits to staff leaving the council in the relevant financial year? And thirdly, on this statement of on page 52, when we talk about a statement of group accounts, similar to the question I asked earlier about the different companies, Invest SK and Gravitas SK and so on, I don't understand what I'm being told here. It says the council, this is halfway down page 52, the council has 4 wholly owned companies, Environment SK, Gravitas Housing, Invest SK and Leisure SK, whose accounts require consolidation. However, the transactions relating to Environment SK and Invest SK are not material, as they receive the majority of their funding from the council. Well, surely that's true of all 4 companies. Why are the other 2? Why are 2 of them in one box and 2 of them in the other box? I don't understand the difference when all 4 companies receive the majority of their funding from the council.
Well, yeah, interesting questions, Councillor Baxter. Alison, are you going to answer those?
I'll answer questions 1 and 3, and then I'll hand over to Richard to answer the second question. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The ESK loan will be included within long-term debtors within the account, within the balance sheet. So it'll be a figure within the accounts. The page number 56 of the agenda report pack, page 4 of the accounts. Okay. So when we produce group accounts, you take out all the transactions that have taken place between us and the companies. So with Environment SK, we would take out the cost that we've incurred for grounds maintenance out of our expenditure. We would then take out the income they've received from us for those works, and then we then add their expenditure into our expenditure column, and any additional income they've received into our income column within the relevant service within the income and expenditure statement. Because those figures are more or less equal, it doesn't create a material difference. Whereas with Leisure SK, they receive their income from customers. So people buy the service from Leisure SK, so they receive a material amount of income from a third party, not from the council. And the same for Gravitas. Gravitas receive income from the sale of assets. So again, the majority of their income isn't that Gravitas don't receive income from the council, they receive it from the people that are purchasing the assets, which then creates a material difference when you actually group the accounts, when you're looking at on an income and expenditure. So again, with Invest SK, the expenditure we incur by providing funding gets removed from our accounts, but then you just add Invest SK's expenditure is equal to that back into our expenditure, so you don't end up with a different set of accounts. The accounts would look no different or not materially different to the accounts that we produce for the council. So we only produce group accounts where the figures produced would be materially different. Materiality is, I think, £1 million. So what we do is we include an enhanced disclosure note for those companies, which is included within the statement of accounts, which details the key figures from within their financial statements. Thank you.
Was Richard, were you going to answer?
So just in terms of the reference to payments that have been made during the financial year, I guess the overarching commentary is that any proposals in respect of exit payments or severance payments go through a value for money test, and that's undertaken by the head of paid service, the chief finance officer and the monitoring officer to ensure that value for money is apparent in any decisions that are taken. The majority of those costs that are referred to are either part of the arts restructure, which went through the democratic process during the course of last year, or the corporate restructure that was implemented from April of last year that the Chief Executive brought forward to Council at the appropriate point. So all of those payments that have been incurred have been offset against salary savings and paybacks of between 1 and 3 years, which is the best practice that we adopt. Just to make a comment whilst I've got the microphone, if you can, Mr. Chairman, just make sure that the committee are clear on the particular recommendations that are in the covering report for this item, which is in the context of what the external auditor told us about the prolonged audit period, is putting in place a delegation between the chair of the committee and myself to sign the accounts on behalf of the committee on the proviso there are no material changes. And if you've heard from Alison, thus far they are disclosure changes that have been identified and nothing material to the core statement. So on the basis that's the continuation and the direction of travel, then we're seeking a delegation in order that the accounts can be signed off at the point at which the audit is complete. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter?
Thank you. Just to come back on that, thank you for the comprehensive answer. I think I understand it now. That's great. I've got no problem with the second part of the comment made by Mr. Wiles about the way we deal with this. However, I would ask, just to be clear, are we being told that it was value for money to pay off one officer £81,000 as a golden goodbye and another officer £115,000 as a golden goodbye? Is that really best value?
I mean, without going into the specific details, each of those proposals will come forward and be assessed on its own merit. It could be that those posts have now come out of the establishment, so there could have been a budgeted cost for the authority, and a decision's been taken to remove that post out of the establishment. So that's part of that arrangement to remove it. So clearly, yes, there is a one-off cost to the authority, but if that post then comes out of the establishment thereafter, then clearly there's an ongoing saving, which is more than outweighing that initial cost that's been incurred. But clearly, as we're in a public meeting, we can't go into too much detail. Suffice to say that overarching value for money test is integral to any decisions about making any payments.
Yeah, just before I come into my Vice Chairman wants to ask a question, I would just say, yeah, thanks for the questions, Councillor Baxter. I think it is right that we keep a close eye on that, because I'm not keen on these payments, but I do realise there are reasons for it, and I realise also it's a private matter. So I think it's right that we do raise it, and I'm pleased that you raised it. I'm not objecting to raising it whatsoever. I think it's a good thing to raise, but I say it's a private matter, and I know there are reasons behind it, so I accept what Richard has said, really. But, Councillor Baxter?
Chair, it is almost an annual occurrence that we spend between $350,000 and $500,000 on payouts each year. That's why I keep raising it each year.
Vice Chairman?
Thank you, Chair. I've got three questions, if I may. So on page 41 of the agenda pack, the financial environment. So obviously, so it mentions the continued uncertainty, and obviously this is an incredibly difficult context in which to manage public finances. So I'd like to thank the finance team for all the hard work they're constantly doing on all of this. I know that you keep very comprehensive strategic risk registers. So my first question is, I'm assuming those are living documents. How often are they reviewed? And obviously they sort of interlink, don't they, across strategy in the service areas, how that works. Secondly, on page 58, there's just a sentence I don't understand. The delayed fairer funding review and business rates retention reviews created a high degree of uncertainty. And then it says, the Council has determined that this uncertainty is not yet sufficient to provide an indication that the assets of the Council might be impaired as a result of the need to close facilities and reduce levels of service provision. I'm just not quite sure what that means. So if you can explain. That's on page 58. And thirdly, our joint operations on page 69. I just wonder if you could just briefly tell us what those two collaborations are for. Thank you.
So the strategic risk register is reviewed every 6 months, but FEDCO do receive a financial risk register at every meeting. Sorry, your second question, was that... Oh, that was under critical judgments. This is just something that we're required to put in by audit, that if there are any judgments that we make within the statements, that we just have to put what those are. That we, so with the, if I use B as an example, we put in there that the critical judgment we've made there is that we're going to receive a full valuation on assets, on 20% of our assets each year. So within a 5-year period, they all get valued. So, and on an annual basis, we also have all material assets valued, because they could obviously have a material impact on the statement if there was a swing in their valuation. But with the any funding reviews and the business rates retention scheme review, because there's not enough information out there, so therefore we can't assess what the impact of that would be on our future finances. So it's just something that we're required to put into here, just to make the readers of the accounts aware that there is uncertainty about the future funding that the council may receive, but we're not in a position to be able to assess that. If we were in a position able to assess it, then we'd put it under note 3, where we do say if this were to happen, then this would be the impact on the accounts. But because we don't know what the impact will be, audit asked us to put it under 2 rather than 3.
Can So is that... Sorry, I literally just don't understand the sentence. So is that sentence saying that it is possible, because we don't know the situation with fairer funding, etc., that it's possible that we might need to close facilities and reduce levels of service provision?
Well, we can't determine that yet because we don't know what the impact of that would be. But if you were to lose significant amounts of income from business rates retention, then that would have an impact on the council's ability to provide services, because that's one of our core funding streams. We receive about £3.5 to £4 million funding from business rates each year. So if that were to reduce down, then obviously that could have a detrimental impact on the provision of services, but we're not in a position to be able to judge that because we haven't received anything from government. And the fair funding review, we've been waiting for that for a number of years, so nobody actually knows what the impact of that would be. So therefore, Audit just ask us to add it to the statements.
Okay, I think Richard wants to come in.
Yeah, just to build on that, I think what we're saying is this is a theoretical risk. That these two reviews have been talked about by government for 4 years now. What we're saying is that because they could significantly compromise the council's financial sustainability, it could go either way, to be fair. The reset, in all likelihood, the idea being that any local growth you've had as a district over a period of time will be taken away, and your baseline need would go back down to the core that the government determined you require as a local authority, and that excess you've built through growth in your district could be redistributed elsewhere in the country. So if that came to pass, then the council is at risk of losing a significant amount of the business rates it retains over the period, because it will be redistributed elsewhere where growth hasn't been seen at the same level. So that is a risk, and obviously the council would have to respond accordingly because its financial plan would be compromised if that happened. Similar with the fair funding, because the fair funding is looking to redistribute the allocation of support across the country based on different indices to the ones that have been held by government nearly 30 years. And there's a whole manner of conversations around that, as you can appreciate, in terms of deprivation, demographic, age profile, and all the other indices that drive costs. There's a lot of lobbying on behalf of councils such as ours through a sparse network, where the argument is that we incur disproportionately greater costs for some of our core services, such as waste collection, things like that, because we're literally travelling miles to collect a handful of waste, whereas in a city, clearly their distribution geographical area is a lot tighter. So there is hope that through the fair funding review, monies will go into those sort of council areas, but clearly it's a finite pot, and distribution needs to fall somewhere. And that's why the government thus far have been really reluctant to grasp this, because there's going to be winners and losers, and it's where those winners and losers fall. But same point is made that because we don't know that, and we don't know that timescale, that either will help this council or it will hinder the council in terms of its financial outlook, and that will have a material impact on the financial outlook for it.
No, that's very clear, thank you. It sounds very worrying, though, doesn't it? And as a committee that are concerned with risk, that sounds quite concerning. Is there anything we can do?
If it was in 2018, I'm trying to think who the Prime Minister was at that point. It's had so many iterations, so many different Secretaries of State looking at it. It's been top of the agenda, it's been at the bottom of the agenda. Interesting enough, on the autumn statement, there was zero mention of it. Nothing at all was referenced. The consultation which we responded to back in 2018 is now 4 years out of date. So my guess would be they would have to restart it again. It's unlikely to be this side of the Parliament term. So it's there in the ether, but in terms of the in tray of the government, I'm not sure it's featuring particularly highly, but it hangs over us because no council can really embrace a sustainable outlook whilst this matter is not resolved.
So do we have a sort of a worst case scenario? Do we have reserves? Does FEDCO, etc., do we have a plan should this go really wrong at any point?
We have nothing on the fair funding review because the components of the fair funding review in terms of the redistribution methodology is not even written on any bit of paper anywhere. There was some government consultation back in the day that said, here's a number of indices, which ones do you think we should include and which ones do you think we should exclude? And clearly 200 councils piled in with their particular view. So the outcome of all that has never been made known to anybody. So I should imagine that goes back into the mix and comes back out another day. The one that we have got a little bit more knowledge about is the business rate, because we know what the reset is. So we know what our local growth has been. So if they did slice that out, we can capture that, and we do know what that figure is. So there's a bit more knowledge about that. But the reset, again, has been talked about for many years, and there's no timeline on that. I think in the autumn statement, there's a strong indication that the 23-24 and the 24-25 settlements will be more or less the same. So if you took that at face value, then nothing's going to happen before 25-26 at the earliest on that one. But it's all to play for.
All right, thank you for that. Well, on a general thing, what I would say is all right.
Sorry, thank you very much. I must admit I would have missed that had it not been a concentrated discussion point, I must admit. My question is a simple one, I hope. The Council has determined that this uncertainty, who made the decision, please?
Sorry, still referring to the same note? To note number 2 on page 2A. That's something that will be done by Richard and I with all of the information that's available from government and other advisors that we have. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, a much easier question. I just wanted to know what the joint operations are on page 69, the Building Control Partnership and Burley. Thank you.
Thank you. The Building Control Partnership is the East Midlands Building Control Partnership, which the council, we manage. The partnership sits with the council. Newark and Sherwood and Rushcliffe Borough Council are also part of that partnership, so they provide the building control service for the 2 districts and 1 borough council. The collaboration agreement with Burley relates to the development at St Martin's Park. Thank you.
Any further questions? No. What I'd just like to say, obviously, I'd like to really thank the Treasury Management team, and particularly I know we've got Richard, Alison and Tracy here, because I have got full confidence in you, and I think we're lucky to have you to do this. Obviously, there's difficult financial things, but I'm quite happy with the excellent work that you do, and I think the committee are. I think the committee are pleased with the work you do, and like I say, I think we're lucky to have you. You seem to know a lot of the answers. You put all it together well. I have full confidence in you all. So with that, I think I would propose we accept the accounts. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Gloria Johnson. All those in favour who want to accept it, please. That's unanimous. All right, we're playing musical buttons here. The next item, please, is Treasury Management mid-year report, please. Who's going to present that? Alison. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. So the Council is required to produce regular reports on Treasury Management. So we have the Treasury Management Strategy, the mid-year report and the outturn report. This report is the mid-year report, so it provides a review of Treasury Management for the period ended the 30th of September. It covers debt management operations, investment operations. It provides an update on the Treasury Management Prudential Code indicators and also provides an economic update for the first part of the current financial year. Section 3 of the report, paragraph 3.1 provides information on the Council's borrowing. No additional borrowing was required during the first half of the year. As you're aware, all of our borrowing is with the Public Works Loan Board, and the average rate paid on the debt portfolio was 2.47%. Appendix A shows the loans outstanding at the 30th of September. The Council currently has short-term borrowing of 3.2 million. This will be repaid in instalments of 1.6 million on the 28th of March and the 28th of September of next calendar year. The average rate of interest on these loans is 3.03%. The Council's investment activity is detailed in paragraphs 3.5 to 3.8, and Appendix A provides a schedule of the investments held at the 30th of September. So the Council held short-term investments of £77.424 million at the 30th of September and £5 million of long-term investments. Long-term investments are classified as non-specified because they exceed 12 months. As at the 30th of September, we had a weighted average rate of return of 2.17%. Link provide benchmarking investment analysis between a group of councils, and the investment benchmarking, the average rate of return was 1.76, so the council's rate of return was approximately 0.4% higher. Paragraphs 3.9 and 3.10 provide information on the prudential indicators. The actual figures for the first 6 months of the year are provided at Appendix A. All investment activity has been maintained within the limits that we have to operate within. And then paragraph 3.11 provides an economic update from Link, who are the Council's Treasury advisors. Obviously, they did give you a presentation earlier this week on Treasury management. So the key points to note are that the base rate was increased to 2.25% in September, which was the 7th consecutive hike. Retail sales had reduced by 1.6% in August, and initial estates showed that public sector spent more than it received in taxes and other income, which resulted in £11.8 billion of borrowing compared to the £5.8 billion forecast. Public sector will cover the whole of the sector, not just local government, just to confirm that. And Link and the capital economic specialists now expect that base rate will peak at 5% by Q1 of 2023. The final paragraph of the report deals with ethical investments. So the Council's current strategy, approved Treasury management strategy, has the ethical investment statement that the Council, in making investments through its Treasury management function, fully supports the ethos of socially responsible investments. But in readiness for the code changes which will be implemented in 23-24, we've included a proposal in here for the committee to review of how the Council could deal with environmental, social and governance factors going forwards. So the proposed statement is that the Council is committed to environmental, social and governance factors through our Treasury management strategy in terms of ESG investment considerations. ESG metrics will be used where appropriate and available in the credit rating agency assessments when considering investment opportunities. But as a Council, we do have to consider that against the key principles which we have to adopt, which are firstly security, secondly liquidity, and then finally yield. So they have to be the key considerations when we're making a decision on where to place investments. This proposal, this amended proposal, has been compiled in conjunction with our Treasury advisors and will be reviewed annually as part of the Treasury Management Strategy. Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Just before I go to Councillor Baxter's questions, just before that, could you just clarify for my benefit and the committee's short-term investments and the long-term investments, the time, what period are short-term investments, what time period is that, and the long-term investments? Is there a set period or is it a bit flexible?
Short-term investments are less than 12 months, well, 12 months and less. Long-term investments are more than 12 months. Thank you.
Councillor Baxter, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. 3 questions or comments. First of all, there's I don't know who proofreads this report, but there are 2 paragraph 3s. It's inconsequential, but we need to get the machine working. Secondly, to say that it is lamentable that we haven't managed to find an agreeable interest rate or make sufficient progress on the Deepens Leisure Centre, as agreed by full council on at least one occasion, that we should invest in a refurbishment of the Deepens Leisure Centre, and we haven't, and it's partly because of the borrowing rates that hasn't happened, and it's dreadful. It's absolutely dreadful. Thirdly, as I mentioned earlier at the wrong time, forgive me, we have seen a lot of media interest about the embarrassing investment in the Qatar Bank. Qatar has never been in the news as much as it has been between now and Christmas, and obviously it's been under scrutiny, and this council has been criticised to some extent unfairly, because the figures in The Guardian were slightly askew. However, we still have money invested in the Qatar Bank. And also in Al Rayyan, I've just looked up Al Rayyan, which is the 2nd largest bank in Qatar. So I think spreading it around different banks in Qatar or any other regime of such a type is not particularly going to help. Halibut looks fantastic, doesn't it? That looks like a German bank. Correct me if I'm wrong, but a rate of 4%, super. And if they've got ethics, then even better. So I welcome the alteration to the text within the Treasury Management Strategy regarding our ethical investments, and anything that can be done each time this report comes to us, anything that we can do to ratchet up our commitment to ethical investment, I fully support.
I think Richard wants to answer that. Before you do that, Richard, I think it'd be useful to clarify we got bad publicity out of The Guardian, which was incorrect information, wasn't it? They were saying we got £120 million in there, and we clearly have not got that money in there, and that does. But Richard, please.
Yeah, just in terms of the current investments with the Qatar Bank, and let's stress we're investing in a bank, we're not investing in a country. So there is a difference between the two. So we don't know what the ESG statements are from the bank itself, but that's where we'll be when we place our monies in institutions. It's the institution itself that we're looking at, not the country in which it resides. And just for correcting Councillor Baxter, the Al Rayyan is actually a commercial bank in the United Kingdom. If you Google it, it's in the United Kingdom, and that's where we've placed the monies in the UK. But in terms of the broader point, and as Alison made that point, security has got to be the priority for this council. Yes, the ethical element is a key element of the decision making, but ultimately the security of the monies is the paramount, and that's my individual responsibility to make sure that those monies that are placed are in secure environments. And the ethical element, as I say, is a key consideration, but it's not the primary consideration. And as has been said, particularly on the training, but obviously we're in a public meeting, so it needs saying again, that some of the ethical institutions are not particularly strongly rated, and the credit rating scores on some of the ethical institutions are poor, and in which case we would not place monies with them, even if they are strong on the ethical side. If their rating is substandard, then the council will not invest in them.
I think I'm right in saying, aren't I, Richard, from the management training session the other day, the 3 main things are security, liquidity, and then yield. They were the 3 main things that came out to me. But Councillor Baxter, I think you...
Yeah, I don't want to be splitting hairs, but Al Rayyan Bank is the UK subsidiary of RIN QSC, which is a Qatar-based Islamic bank. So it is the UK office of the Qatari bank.
Is invested in the UK, Mr. Chairman, not overseas.
Yeah. I think the ordinary Guardian reader is going to see it as a Qatari bank.
Any further questions, comments? Councillor Gloria Johnson. Yeah.
Perhaps it would be beneficial to contact the Guardian and ask them to print it properly.
Yeah. Well, it gives us bad publicity, and they certainly made a wrong print, didn't they? Yeah. Caffey. Councillor Caffey.
Thank you. Thank you for this report. And I think this report identifies some of the issues you've just been talking about there, Richard. That it's the balance is very hard to strike. I mean, I particularly noticed this in 3.12 about information not being readily available regarding where institutions place their investments. It is quite hard sometimes, isn't it, to know if you're investing in a bank where that bank places all of its, wide-ranging investments. It's a very difficult area. I do think this report assures us as a committee that all the investments have been made according to our policies, procedures, and also that we do consult with outside bodies, including SIPFA, to ensure that our policies are robust. I think there's definitely a conversation to be had about the issues that Councillor Baxter is raising, but I would just like to recognise for myself, I think this is a very, very difficult and nuanced conversation to have. Thank you.
I would agree with that. I know when you invest in the bank, you're not quite sure where they are putting the money, and I suppose on a personal note, really, on pension investments, you're not quite sure where they actually go to. So it is a bit difficult, but I think we've got a policy that we follow. I'm quite happy that they're following that policy. Security is the main issue, so I'm quite happy to accept the report, notwithstanding all the comments that we've been made. So do I have a proposal to accept this report, please? Councillor Richard, or am I, and then will you second it then, Gloria? Yeah. All those in favour of approving it? We've had nobody object to any report so far, have we? Thank you. Right. The next item is the work programme. And obviously this morning we had the scrutiny workshop, and that will come back. I would correct, I don't know whether you've got it on the work programme, it did show the date as the 14th of December. That's now been amended. I don't know whether everybody's got it amended to the end of January. And that scrutiny review, which is important, will come back to this committee then with the comments that the workshop actually produced. So is there any comments about the work programme? Anybody want to add anything to it? Or everybody happy to accept that?
Mr. Chairman, can I just confirm it is the 30th of January and it has gone in people's diaries, the next meeting?
It's the 30th of January. Yeah, is everybody aware of that? Okay, it says the 14th of December on mine, crossed out. The 30th of January. Thank you. So I propose we accept that work programme. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gloria Johnson. All those in favour? Thank you. I have no other business, so I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much. We'll now go to the Chief Exec's room to see Lucy about training and internal audit.